Hey guys, VaulSC here. I hope that you're having a really good week. I want to introduce you to the latest custom mission that I've created. It's called EDX Operations. And as usual, this is going to be a commentary video. If you want to just skip straight to it, click on the link in the video description to go to my custom maps area where you can simply look at this document and read the mission. And I have created a practice map for you guys to play on, which is just going to be in my workshop mod where you can download my maps. It's going to be in the black chest, which I'll put a link in the video description to that workshop mod for Steam as well if you want to go and check it out. But for those of you guys who want the commentary, I will talk about what I have done here. This is a remake of a mission that was called Engineering Deck, which used to be an ITS mission by Corvus Belli in Season 10 and possibly one or two other earlier seasons. It's essentially a mission where there is an objective room in the middle, and there are 5 consoles in a little X grid. So if we look at this, as you can see from the top down, there's the objective room, there's this particular silhouette here, and then there's 4 others around here, so you're basically going to grab those. And the original version of the mission was played in such a way that you got the bulk of your objective points for controlling the room in the center at the end of the game, and by controlling it, that means you've got to make sure there are no enemy models that are alive in the middle of the room, and that you have at least one model in there. As simple as that. And with the consoles, you just have to have more of them than your opponent. And the way that would usually play out is that in the early part of your game, you would normally grab these 2 consoles here, and your opponent would do the same with their ones, and then at the end of the game, you just grab that console, and if they can't take it back off you, or if you had the final turn because you're a person who started second, then it would be quite easy to score that way. So I always liked the mission. I thought it was pretty good in its original incarnation, but it's definitely a better mission to go second on, because pushing into one specific little location, which is a room, and clicking on one console is very easy if you have the final turn. So you always want to go second. Those kinds of missions aren't as easy if you've got a few different things to complete and they're spread out across the board, because your opponent can make that a lot harder for you and set up AROs. But when you're dealing with one objective room like this, you know, it really is easy at the end of the day to put like a smoke grenade or a eclipse grenade in there and just shoot out the few models that are protecting it and then move in there. And remember, even a camo marker will be enough for securing the room. And the console, well, even if your opponent's got arrows set up to shoot your person, clicking on it once will be enough to win it. So I have redesigned the mission a little bit, and I want you guys to have a look at it and maybe play a practice game on it, because I will likely be using this for my TTS League, which I'm going to be announcing next week, and possibly is going to be starting on the 28th. So, EDX Operations, how does it work in my version? Obviously, EDX, by the way, stands for Engineering Deck, and then X just refers to just a new version of the mission. So, the structure of scoring for the first lot of objectives here is broken up into player turn 5 and player turn 6, and I've spelt out the exact definition of that later in the document where it talks about player turn definitions, and I want to just read that now, actually. Player 1 means the player who's taking the first turn in this game. A player's final turn means their third turn, obviously. Each player has 3 turns each. This means 6 player turns in total. Therefore, player turn 5 is the final turn of the person who took the first turn. Player turn 6 is the final turn of the game. So I don't know how I can make it any more clearer than that. You know, player turn 5 is the penultimate turn, the second to last turn of the game, and then turn 6 is the end of the game. So what we're saying here is that if you're the player who has more consoles at the end of turn 5, you actually get 2 objective points. So looking back at the map here, if you're going first, and let's say you're the red player, and you collect these ones. So you've grabbed that, and you've grabbed that because these are the ones that are closest to your deployment zone. And then you move into the middle of the room, throw a smoke grenade, grab this console, and you have 3 of them. Well, that is the majority of them. Your opponent may well have these other 2, so we'll mark them blue by that stage, which is fine. Your opponent can grab them. They are closer on that side of the table. But if you've done this at the end of your last turn as player 1, so there's still a turn remaining. It's not the end of the game yet. Your opponent has their final turn, but if the objectives look like this, well, that actually means that you get 2 objective points, which they can't then take back off you. But it then says if you have more connected consoles than the adversary at the end of player 2's final turn, that's the end of the game basically, you get 2 objective points for that, and that's player turn 6. So if I've just grabbed my 2 objective points, let's say I'm red, playing Nomads, if I change that to 2, so I've got 2 objective points at the end of my final turn here, and then our opponent moves into the room and storms the back off us and connects that one. Well, that means they have more consoles at the end of turn 6, so they will get 2 objective points as well, and we're kind of tied up. So you can sort of see the dynamic there. Just looking at the first part of this, both players have a reasonably equal opportunity to pick up 2 objective points. Now, even though on paper that looks like it's very symmetrical and drawish, I want you to consider a couple of things. We've all played Infinity a lot of times, well, most people have for years, and we have seen a lot of situations where, 3 turns is a long time, you can get a lot of kills in that time, and if it's an absolute blowout, your opponent really can't, grab that objective in the middle in their final game round at all. So there are going to be some games where one player, either going first, actually gets 3 consoles or maybe more, and the opponent just can't do anything about it in their responsive turn. Or player 1 just has such a terrible run moving out and trying to get things done that by the end of that 3rd turn or that 5th player turn, they just can't even get into the room and they can't just get objectives back off their opponent. So player 2 is just sitting there and getting 4 objectives right off the bat. So that can certainly happen. In competitive games where it's pretty tight and dice rolls are fairly even, both players will have an even opportunity to move in and grab the console and score that way, so the objectives may well be tied at the end of that, which is okay. That is something that I'm actually going for. Similarly, scoring from the objective room, which again means that, here it is, zone of operations is considered secured when it's the only person to have any troopers inside the room which are not in a null state. So if you have the room secured at the end, you get 2 points. That's the end of your, 3 turns. And then in the final turn of the game, when your opponent responds, they can take it back and get 2 objective points as well. And again, if you're doing so well in that first 2/3 of the game that you've locked your opponent out of the room because you've got too many AROs set up and you've just bashed them up so brutally, then you're going to end up with a big wad of points. So if after 2 game rounds you've just really devastated your opponent and they can't really do very much, and you're sitting on 3 consoles and you've got the room, you're going to get 8 objective points and it's going to be a decisive win. And that's what missions should really reward. That's what this game should really be about. If you've really just battered your opponent that badly, and it's not an easy thing to do at a high level of Infinity, but if you have achieved it, you will get a big margin of victory, just like you would with any other good mission, right? So the question then becomes, well, if both players have equal opportunity to seize the momentum and push in on their active turn and score the points, what is there to stop this mission from really being a draw too often, or not really rewarding a player that's playing slightly better? So I've introduced a couple of other things here. If you have 4 or more connected consoles at the end of the game, you get a point, and that slightly favors the person with second turn, as it probably should a lot of the time, because first turn gives you the best chance to alpha strike and get the momentum rolling with material. But if you're going second, and this is the start of my second turn as the red player, and I move in and I grab that, obviously the score is going to get tied up because my opponent just did that the previous round. But if I then also move over here and grab this one, then I would have 4 of them at the end of the game, which gives me 1 final bonus point. So even though the scoreline might look like, it's 4-4 on either side, because, I picked up the consoles at the end of my turn 5, and then my opponent got the consoles at the end of turn 6, and I got the objective room turn of 5, they got the objective room end of turn 6. We're on 4 each, but if it also happened that I grabbed 1 console, that kind of breaks it up and turns it into a 5-4 win, which means that it's not a draw anymore. But the reason I'm doing that is because picking up 4 consoles is a lot harder than getting 3 for the player going last. So if your game plan is just to passively wait and stall your opponent and hang out and mark a state and put mines down, your opponent can make it pretty hard for you to move into the middle of the room and take the room, take a console, and get a console on their side of the table as well. That's a lot harder than just jumping on the middle of the room at the end of the game, which is what makes this mission better than Engineering Deck in its original incarnation. I really do believe that quite strongly. So I'm looking forward to how that works out in practice. Finally, I've also made it an opportunity to kill more enemy specialists for 1 bonus objective point. it's important that we at least have something in there that only one player can get. So these other 8 objective points that are up for grabs, they can be split quite evenly, whereas kill more enemy specialists is only ever going to go to one player. So if you are being pretty diligent and you're being careful with your specialist and you're hiding them and you're being really good at assassinating your enemy specialists, you can break up the deadlock that way. You can end the standoff and get more objective points than your opponent. Even though it was symmetrical and even for all of these ones, you could still kill more specialists at the end to stop it from becoming a draw. It may also become a draw because one of you gets 4 consoles and the other person kills more specialists, but again, I'm okay with some games being draws. I think that this mission will definitely generate some draws, but probably less than people think. I remember when Oblique Assault first came out, and I had a couple of people saying, wow, it's going to be a draw every single time. And we looked at the data. I mean, we played hundreds of games in these tournaments, and the draws didn't actually come up as frequently as anybody thought. A lot of games were actually very decisive despite the structure. EDX Operations, again, I believe it will result in some draws, which I'm completely okay with, but I think you guys will be pleasantly surprised when we actually bring in the data and the results of a lot of games, that some instances of this mission will turn out to be blowouts, like 10-0 wins for one player. And sometimes it will be a narrow, exciting game where player wins by 2 objective points or 1 objective point, and it will be the player who played a little bit better or had really good lucky dice rolls. So I'm happy with the incarnation as it is now, but always open to changing it in future. So no classifieds, of course. Deployment, there is an exclusion area, just like there was in the original engineering deck. I've removed the original engineering deck's rules about drop troops. I didn't think that was necessary. But yeah, I do like an exclusion zone because it kind of keeps Nomads a bit more honest. Nomads being the most powerful faction in the game, in my opinion, just because of their ability to move out with a lot of protection and cover from the Morans. They've got the Eclipse grenades with, I don't want to turn this into a balance video. I just like the fact that a mission like this does have an exclusion zone, because exclusion zones, in my opinion, do help balance the game a little bit. It's a little bit unfortunate for Ariadne, but overall, exclusion zones are, fairly reasonable things. As long as they're not in all of your missions, otherwise people just stop taking infiltrators in their lists altogether. No retreat, of course, it's one of my missions, so I never include retreat ever, obviously. The objective room, just really basic, with my standard things about no climbing plus on the objective room walls. When you load up this map for the first time, there will be a note card explaining that you can shoot into the room or out of the room, but not from one side to another like that. That's pretty standard in a lot of my maps, so don't forget about that. The walls, the doors are open in this particular mission, and although you can modify this terrain piece, by the way, this is the Micro Arts map that's Persian and Zulu Cobra have spent a lot of hard work making. I guess you could play it with a smaller access. I kind of prefer it with the larger access doors though, so that's what I've put as the default on the map. Consoles, counted as a Silhouette 3 marker. You can't deploy next to them, and they grant cover as normal. Connecting the consoles works just like it does in any other mission. Specialist troops, I've decided to give engineers a +3 mod, but I've decided not to follow suit with Corvus Belli, where you get a bonus dice. So this is kind of a compromise where you still get +3, which makes them way better at grabbing the boxes, but you only get to roll once as normal. So it's a small bonus, but not a massive bonus. I just felt like, once you get the 2 dice and the +3, you're almost never failing it, and the willpower value of the trooper suddenly doesn't matter anymore. Whereas in this case, it definitely does make a difference as to whether you're willpower 12 or willpower 16, when it comes into this kind of dynamic. There's the definitions we read out earlier, and that's the end of the mission. So I think it's quite a straightforward mission to understand and read and play. I think once you guys have practiced this once or twice, it'll be really easy to remember the rules for it as well. And like I said, it's very likely I'll be using this in my upcoming TTS League Season 4, I think we're up to now, which I will hopefully announce next week. It will include a lot of custom homebrew rules, but these will be ones that have already been playtested and done polls for. For example, the stuff we used in our campaign about limited insertion and about not knowing the willpower value of Lieutenant and not using the decompression zones, that kind of thing, localized decompression. So just stuff like that, and the missions will mostly be my own custom missions, if not all of them. So this will give you guys an opportunity to play around with it a bit and give some more feedback. The feedback so far has been very good, and yeah, hopefully this mission results in some really good gaming.